is a Mark IV ND Mazda MX-5, and the recipe for the MX-5 has always been a simple one. You've got an engine at the front, you've got two seats and a drop top in the middle, and you've got rear wheel drive. So why are we driving one now? Well, there are two very good reasons. In 2020, Mazda celebrated its 100th birthday, and up and down through the model range they created 100 anniversary editions. This is one of them. Secondly, I can't believe I'm saying this, we have never had a Mazda MX-5 on GRR's YouTube channel. Well, actually that's a lie. We have, but they belong to a chap called Michael from New Zealand. And his MX-5s aren't exactly normal. So, I think this is long overdue. The first generation MX-5 was introduced in 1989, and the sales graphs very quickly adopted a flight path to the moon. In 1998 came the second generation MX-5, the NB, and in 2005 the Mark III NC. With each new model came a little more kit, but also more weight. And so with the Mark IV ND in 2016, Mazda looked back to the Mark I for inspiration. Even though it was filled with modern tech and safety kit, it was light, almost as light as the Mark II that had come along 18 years earlier. And now, with this 100th anniversary edition, you get a Mark IV with a party hat. There's a cherry roof, 100-year badging, 17-inch wheels, a burgundy interior, more anniversary badging, and a special key. But what about the mechanical differences? Well, there aren't any, actually, none at all. But that doesn't necessarily matter. The engine is a 2-litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder with 186 PS at 7,000 RPM, which is also the red line, and 205 newton meters of torque at 4,000 RPM. 0 to 62 miles an hour takes 6.5 seconds, and the top speed is 136 miles an hour. Now, I will admit that the sound is not an inspiring one. It's just a noise, really. But that's not really what an MX-5 is about. I do understand that part of the sports car experience for a lot of people is the sound of the engine, whether that's a straight 6, a V8, V10, V12, a 5-cylinder, whatever it might be. But you don't buy an MX-5 because of the sound it makes or because of the speed. You're more likely to buy an MX-5 because what appeals is the package as a whole. The gearbox is a 6-speed manual, and that is something I'm very, very glad about. Old MX-5s did used to come with automatics, but they were terrible. And why were you buying an MX-5 with an automatic anyway, unless you literally didn't care about driving and about an MX-5? In which case, why were you buying an MX-5? It's a lovely little gearbox. It feels weighty and connected in a way that some gearboxes just don't. Some just feel quite rubbery, quite weak. In this, not a chance. Everything else, the brakes, the tyres, the suspension, the steering, it's all quite simple. You have 280mm discs front and back. There are double wishbones at the front and a multi-link setup at the rear, with Bilstein dampers all the way round. The power steering is electrically assisted. There's nothing crazy here, but because the MX-5 doesn't weigh very much, it weighs 1,057 kilos without a driver, it all just gels. The car is comfortable but still controls its weight well. The brakes are enough for the speed that's on offer, and there's enough grip to make you feel safe, but not so much grip that you can't get the rear to move around a little bit. Balance is probably one of the best words you could use to describe an MX-5. It isn't just that the chassis feels balanced, it's that everything feels proportional. If I had to put my finger on something and say, actually, okay, that feels weaker than, let's say, an old MX-5, then I'd have to say the steering doesn't chatter away quite as much as it used to. But if you're buying any modern car, sports car or otherwise, and expect it to have as chatty steering as it used to, you're balmy, quite frankly. There are very, very few modern cars that have anything like the steering that they would have done 20 or 30 years ago. It's just not possible. This has electrically assisted power steering, but that doesn't really matter because relative to many other electrically assisted power steering systems, it's as nice and as precise as you could hope it to be. It still feels MX-5. What if you're wondering if an MX-5 would be something you would enjoy? What if you've heard one or too many hairdresser jokes for it to be funny anymore, and you're not sure whether it's worth a shot at all? Well, an MX-5 isn't for everyone, but then no car is for everyone. What works in the MX-5's favour is, and always has been, that it's simple and what you get is good. And if you do then want to go away and push it further towards something else, it's quite easy to do that. That is why I own one. I own an old Mark II MX-5, and granted, it isn't the finest example around. It's done 150,000 miles, it has rear wheel arches that kind of resemble a sieve, but it's great. It's my first car, which is why I've still got it, and I wanted something that was small and rear wheel drive. I didn't buy it because I wanted a convertible. Those were the two things that I wanted, small rear wheel drive, and that's exactly what I got. Besides, how many other light rear wheel drive and relatively inexpensive sports cars are there around? Yes, there is the Alpine A110, but that's a slightly different experience and it's also more money. No, the Mazda MX-5 is not the fastest sports car around. It's not the loudest sports car either. But for more than 30 years now, Mazda has kept the recipe more or less the same, and that shows. It's just simple, honest fun.